Chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita has 29 shloks. The chapter is also called Karamsayas Yoga. The text 16 is very important in this chapter. Despite the combined light of the stars and the light of the moon, the darkness does not go away even in the cloudless night. But the moment sun rises, the night makes a hasty exit. This is what is told by Lord Krishna. The words are so explicit. The light of the sun is such that the darkness cannot remain before it. So when the wisdom of knowledge is dawned, there is no darkness, the clarity of mind is achieved. The Karamyogis who are engaged in the performance of their duties without attachment, they see the soul, big soul in all the souls, all living beings, having controlled their senses and emotions. The performer carries out all his actions without being entangled. Now the shlok-wise division of the chapter is as under. Shlok 1 to 6, Sankhya Yoga and the yoga of unattached, motiveless action described. Shlok 7 to 12, marks of a Sankhya Yogi and Karam Yogi and their glories are explained. Shlok 13 to 26, Gyan Yoga or the yoga of knowledge is described and explained fully. Shlok 27 to 29, Dhyan Yoga, the details of meditation together with devotion, they are explained by Lord. The English translation of these shlokas is as follows. Arjun said, Krishna, you have recommended freedom from action, and then again you praise the necessity of working and following Karam Yoga. Therefore, between the two, you must give me your considered opinion about which path is good for me. Lord Krishna said, Karamsayas or Karam Yoga, both these are extremely beneficial, but between the two, Karam Yoga is preferred as it is easier to practice. Arjun, the person who does not breed envy or jealousy with anyone, nor does he criticize others, such a Karam Yogi in fact may be considered as a sannyasi, because freed from the selfishness, he transcends petty worldly attachments. Only ignorant people think sannyas and Karam Yoga achieve different goals, not the enlightened one. Because anyone follows any of these two divine paths, he is bound to merge with the Almighty as a result. The blessed abode reached by the Gyan Yogis can be achieved through Karam Yoga. Therefore, whoever considers Gyan Yoga is a kind of religious abstraction and Karam Yoga as capable of giving the same result, he understands correctly. But Arjun, without Karam Yoga, that is performing one's duty selflessly, it is difficult to realize sannyas, that is overcoming the personal ego in the deeds done by an individual. But the person whose mind is always engaged in the Almighty and is a Karam Yogi gets merged with the Almighty or becomes one with Him sooner or later. The person who has controlled his mind and gets endowed with purity of thoughts, his Atma is no less than the Almighty Himself, as he is embodiment of Atma in all beings. Such a Karam Yogi carries on performing his duty without attachment. The man of wisdom, the Sankhyayogi, when he sees or when he listens, when he touches or when he smells, when he eats or walks or sleeps or breathes, when he speaks, when he relinquishes or receives, or even when he closes his eyes and opens them, considers that all these senses carry on with their functions, he thinks that he, in fact, is not doing anything whatsoever. The person who has dedicated all his actions to the Almighty gets rid of attachments of all kinds and performs his duty peacefully. He is like a lotus flower in water and does not get affected by sins of any kind. A Karamyogi who is free from impurity of thought and mind carries on performing his duties with his body and with his mind without expectation of the results, with only objective of purifying his mind. A Karamyogi relinquishes the fruit of his labor and attains peace worthy of realization of the Almighty. But the person who desires the result of his labor gets enchained with attachment. The person whose mind is full of control, such a follower of Sankhya Yoga, renounces all deeds with his wisdom and abides peacefully in the house with 9 doors, that is the body, without getting affected by outside influence. He remains stable joyfully in the thought of Almighty. The Almighty does not create deeds done by any man, nor the results thereof such deeds, but the character of the person and his nature only define his deeds and the results thereof. The omnipresent Lord does not assume good or bad deeds of anyone, but ignorance has totally covered knowledge. Therefore, all people get confused and they are indecisive. But it is not for the person whose ignorance has been wiped out with the prime divine wisdom. As the sun spreads its light, in the same manner his knowledge enlightens him. The person whose mind and wisdom rise above the worldly things and becomes divine, and whose thoughts remain engaged in the immortal Almighty, such practitioner, seamless with his wisdom, becomes great. Eventually he attains deliverance or the elusive rare salvation. Such wise men have no distinction in their mind whether they see a well-read, humble Brahmin or a cow or an elephant or even a dog or a demon. Their reaction remains the same. They do not react differently. The person who practices samabhav, maintaining same polite attitude toward good or bad humans, objects or actions, he has in his lifetime itself conquered this world. In fact, such a person has realized God. The Almighty, who is free of sin, holds some bhav for everyone. The person who is not overjoyed on receiving something he likes or loves, and at the same time who is not agitated on receiving something he hates, such a stable-minded person is above the deluge of the doubts and in fact is an integral part of Almighty Himself. The person whose mind is unattached to the worldly affairs due to his self-control is able to experience sattvic joy which is present in the meditative mind, thereafter he experiences divine unending bliss that comes with the attainment of salvation or realization of God. The pleasures that we get out of our sins, enjoying the worldly sensory objects, appear to be excellent in the beginning, yet in fact most of these cause endless pain. Besides, these are the fleeting moments which come and vanish rapidly. Therefore, Arjuna, a wise man, does not indulge or gets involved in these worldly pleasures. The seeker who is able to overpower desire and anger and is able to withstand the dire effects caused by them in his life alone is a yogi, and he alone is happy in the real sense. The person who has decisively listened to his soul and not his senses, and who finds comfort not in the worldly objects, but who comforts his soul with his good deeds, achieves happiness and wisdom. He finds solace in the inner self and ultimately achieves salvation. The person who finds his happiness only in his own Atma, soul, and dwells in his Atma, and whose wisdom emanates from his Atma, such as Sankhyayogi, experiencing oneness with the true, all-pervading, all-powerful Almighty, ultimately attains peace and tranquility of God. Free from desire and anger, the seeker who has conquered his mind and realized the Almighty is a wise devotee. He too realizes the all-pervading, omnipresent peace of the Almighty. The person who does not brood over worldly pleasures and keeps his mind free from these, fixes his gaze in the center of his forehead and ensures that he breathes in and out equally. He who has conquered his senses and his mind, he who has always been meditating in the form and features of God and is free from desires, fear and anger. In fact, he has achieved the experience of true freedom. My devotees who consider me worthy of all their yajnas and their meditation, and consider me the God of all gods, well-wisher of all beings, unselfish, loving and generous, realizing these basic attributes of the Almighty, they all achieve peace and real bliss. So this in fact is the entire chapter 5 of the Bhagavad Gita, which has been briefly explained.